Red pulps and black seeds compose the ripe watermelons. 4 cloves of yellow rind enfold the big persimmons, when the pomegranates are split wide. Cinnabar grains glisten like specks of ruby, when the chestnuts are cracked open, their tough bronze are hard like cornelian. Walnut and silver almonds fare well with tea. Coconuts and grapes may be pressed into wine. Hazelnuts, yews, and crabapples overfill the dishes. Kumquats, sugarcanes, tangerines, and oranges crowd the tables. Sweet yams are baked. Yellow sperms overboiled. The tubers minced with seeds of water lily. And soup in stone pots simmers on a gentle fire. Mankind may boast its delicious dainties. But what can best the pleasure of mountain monkeys? The monkeys honored the Monkey King with the seat at the head of the table, while they sat below according to their age and rank. They drank for a whole day, each of the monkeys taking a turn to go forward and present the Monkey King with wine, flowers, and fruits. The next day the Monkey King rose early and gave the instruction. "Little ones, cut me some pine wood and make me a raft. Then find me a bamboo for the pole, and gather some fruits and the like. I'm about to leave." When all was ready, he got onto the raft by himself. Pushing off with all his might, he drifted out toward the great ocean and, taking advantage of the wind, set sail for the border of South Jambudvipa continent. Here is the consequence of this journey. The heaven-born monkey, strong in magic might. He left the mount and rode the raft to catch fair wind. He drifted across the sea to seek immortal's way. Determined in heart and mind to achieve great things, it's his lot, his portion, to quit earthly zeals. Calm and carefree, he'll face a lofty sage. He'd meet, I think, a true, discerning friend. The source disclosed, all Dharma will be known. It was indeed his fortune that, after he boarded the wooden raft, a strong southeast wind which lasted for days sent him to the northwestern coast, the border of the South Jambudvipa continent. He took the pole to test the water and, finding it shallow, one day, he abandoned the raft and jumped ashore. On the beach there were people fishing, hunting wild geese, digging clams, and draining salt. He approached them and, making a weird face and some strange antics, he scared them into dropping their baskets and nets and scattering in all directions. One of them could not run and was caught by the Monkey King, who stripped him of his clothes and put them on himself, aping the way humans wore them. With a swagger he walked through counties and prefectures, imitating human speech and human manners in the marketplaces. He rested by night and dined in the morning, but he was bent on finding the way of the Buddhas, immortals, and holy sages, on discovering the formula for eternal youth. He saw, however, that the people of the world were all seekers after profit and fame. There was not one who showed concern for his appointed end. This is their condition. When will end this quest for fortune and fame? This tyrant of early rising and retiring late. Riding on mules they long for noble steeds. By now prime ministers, they hope to be kings. For food and raiment they suffer stress and strain. Never fearing Yama's call to reckoning. Seeking wealth and power to give to sons of sons. There's not one ever willing to turn back. The Monkey King searched diligently for the way of immortality, but he had no chance of meeting it. Going through big cities and visiting small towns, he unwittingly spent 8 or 9 years on the South Jambudvipa continent before he suddenly came upon the great Western Ocean. He thought that there would certainly be immortals living beyond the ocean. So, having built himself a raft like the previous one, he once again drifted across the Western Ocean until he reached the West Paragadania continent. After landing, he searched for a long time, when all at once he came upon a tall and beautiful mountain with thick forests at its base. Since he was afraid neither of wolves and lizards nor of tigers and leopards, he went straight to the top to look around. It was indeed a magnificent mountain. 1,000 peaks stand like rows of spears. Like 10,000 cubits of screen widespread. The sun's beams lightly enclose the azure mist. In darkening rain, the mount's color turns cool and green. Dry creepers entwine old trees. ancient fords edge secluded paths, rare flowers and luxuriant grass, tall bamboos and lofty pines, tall bamboos and lofty pines. For 10,000 years grow green in this blessed land, rare flowers and luxuriant grass. In all seasons bloom as in the isles of the blessed. The calls of birds hidden are near. The sounds of streams rushing are clear. Deep inside deep canyons the orchids interweave. On every ridge and crag sprout lichens and mosses. Rising and falling, the ranges show a fine dragon's pulse. Here in reclusion must an eminent man reside. As he was looking about, he suddenly heard the sound of a man speaking deep within the woods. Hurriedly he dashed into the forest and cocked his ear to listen. It was someone singing, and the song went thus. I watch chess games, my axe handles rotted. I chop at wood, zhang zhang the sound. I walk slowly by the cloud's fringe at the valley's entrance, selling my firewood to buy some wine. I am happy and laugh without restraint. When the path is frosted in autumn's height, I face the moon, my pillow the pine root. Sleeping till dawn, I find my familiar woods. I climb the plateaus and scale the peaks, to cut dry creepers with my axe. When I gather enough to make a load, I stroll singing through the marketplace, and trade it for 3 pints of rice, with nary the slightest bickering over a price so modest. Plots and schemes I do not know, without vainglory or attaint. My life's prolonged in simplicity. Those I meet, if not immortals, would be Taoists, seated quietly to expound the yellow court. When the handsome Monkey King heard this, he was filled with delight, saying, So the immortals are hiding in this place. He leapt at once into the forest. Looking again carefully, he found a woodcutter chopping firewood with his axe. The man he saw was very strangely attired. On his head he wore a wide splint hat, of seed leaves freshly cast from new bamboos. On his body he wore a cloth garment, of gauze woven from the native cotton. Around his waist he tied a winding sash, of silk spun from an old silkworm. On his feet he had a pair of straw sandals, with laces rolled from withered sedge. In his hands he held a fine steel axe, a sturdy rope coiled round and round his load. In breaking pines or chopping trees, where's the man to equal him? The Monkey King drew near and called out, Reverend Immortal, your disciple raises his hands. The woodcutter was so flustered that he dropped his axe as he turned to return the salutation. Blasphemy! Blasphemy! He said. I, a foolish fellow with hardly enough clothes or food. How can I bear the title of immortal? The Monkey King said. If you are not an immortal, how is it that you speak his language? The woodcutter asked. What did I say that sounded like the language of an immortal? The Monkey King explained. When I came just now to the forest's edge, I heard you singing. Those I meet, if not immortals, would be Taoists, seated quietly to expound the yellow court. The yellow court contains the perfected words of the way and virtue. What can you be but an immortal? Laughing, the woodcutter said. I can tell you this much. The tune of that lyric is named, A Court Full of Blossoms, and it was taught to me by an immortal, a neighbor of mine. He saw that I had to struggle to make a living, and that my days were full of worries, so he told me to recite the poem whenever I was troubled. This, he said, would both comfort me and rid me of my difficulties. It happened that I was anxious about something just now, so I sang the song. It didn't occur to me that I would be overheard. The Monkey King said, If you are a neighbor of the immortal, why don't you follow him in the cultivation of the way? Wouldn't it be nice to learn from him the formula for eternal youth? The woodcutter replied. My lot has been a hard one all my life. When I was young, I was indebted to my parents' nurture until I was 8 or 9. As soon as I began to have some understanding of human affairs, my father unfortunately died, and my mother remained a widow. I had no brothers or sisters, So there was no alternative but for me alone to support and care for my mother. Now that my mother is growing old, all the more I dare not leave her. Moreover, my fields are rather barren and desolate, and we haven't enough food or clothing. I can't do more than chop 2 bundles of firewood to take to the market in exchange for a few pennies to buy a few pints of rice. I cook that myself, serving it to my mother with the tea that I make. That's why I can't practice austerities." The Monkey King said, "According to what you have said, you are indeed a gentleman of filial piety, and you will certainly be rewarded in the future. I hope, however, that you will show me the way to the immortal's abode, so that I may reverently call upon him." "It's not far," the woodcutter said. "This mountain is called the Mountain of Mind and Heart, and in it is the cave of Slanting Moon and 3 stars. Inside the cave is an immortal by the name of the Patriarch Subodhi, who has already sent out innumerable disciples. Even now there are 30 or 40 persons who are practicing austerities with him. Follow this narrow path and travel south for about 7 or 8 miles, and you will come to his home." Grabbing the woodcutter, the Monkey King said, "Honored brother, go with me. If I receive any benefit, I will not forget the favor of your guidance." "What a bone-headed fellow you are," the woodcutter said. "I have just finished telling you these things, and you still don't understand. If I go with you, won't I be neglecting my livelihood? And who will take care of my mother? I must chop my firewood."